They still remember the feeling of defeat, the sensation of my world crumbling around me. It was as if I had lost all control, and my body had become a mere playground for the desires of others. I felt like I was just a crime scene, a place where men could come and abuse me, leaving their mark on my soul. This was my life now, a never-ending nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. As I look back, I realize that my childhood wasn't all that bad. My parents had divorced, but we were okay. I was just a normal 18-year-old girl, trying to be independent and make my way in the world. I had just moved into a YMCA, and I was eager to start my new life. I wanted to be friendly, to be the good neighbor, so I baked cakes for the people in my building. That's how I met William, a guy who became my friend, and through him, I met Ali Sultan. They were just guys my age, or so I thought. I didn't know what danger looked like then, and I certainly didn't know what was coming my way. I remember the days when I would see William and Ali Sultan around the building. They would make these disgusting gestures from across the road. But I just thought they were weirdos. I had no idea what was lurking beneath the surface. I was naive, and I didn't know how to read the signs. But as time went on, I began to notice that things were not quite right. There were strange noises at night, and I would see men lurking around the building. I tried to brush it off, but deep down, I knew something was off. A weekend that one of them got out of prison for GBH, he came to my door. I looked through the spy hole and saw what looked like a little kid, but when I opened it, he was hiding behind the wall. He shoved his foot in the door, and I was caught off guard. William was there, and he saw him, but instead of helping me, he just said, "Just let him in." I wish I hadn't, but I think he would have gotten in anyway. He got rid of William, and then I was alone with Shamil. He was muscular, circling me, grabbing my throat. I tried to push him off, but he just tightened his grip. I felt like he'd strangle me if I resisted. I said no. I told him I was in a relationship. He acted like he couldn't hear me. That was the first time I was raped. The days that followed were a blur. I was in shock, and my mind was empty. I was supposed to be taking my final exams, but I couldn't focus. I confided in a college counselor who encouraged me to go to the police. But before I could even talk to them, Ali Sultan showed up with a friend. I couldn't fight anymore. I gave up easily because I was so scared. By the time I saw the police that Saturday, I'd been raped twice more. The policewoman was nice, but she told me that if I said it was rape, they had to arrest him. If I was too scared to have him arrested, I had to say it was consensual. I was terrified of repercussions, so they made me write a statement saying it was consensual, but that I regretted it. They implied that the first rape wasn't rape either. After that, I thought everything was my fault. I thought I'd given myself a reputation, and that I deserved it. As the days turned into weeks, I lost all control. Strangers would pull up in cars and say they'd heard about my oral skills. It felt like every man was a threat. I was being raped 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes by more than one man in a day. I was trapped in a never-ending cycle of abuse, and I didn't know how to escape. I was just a body, a crime scene, a place where men could come and abuse me. I had lost all sense of self-worth, and I didn't know how to get it back. And then, one day, I was tricked into going to a party. A guy gave me a false reassurance, saying he wasn't like the others. He poured me a massive glass of vodka, and I was trying to take back some control. I thought I would consent to sex with him, but he didn't care. He forcibly anally raped me. It was incredibly painful, and I was humiliated. When he was finished, he invited all his friends into the room to look at my naked body. He showed them the blood on the condom. I was so embarrassed that I just wanted to disappear. I don't know how I survived those months. I was just a shell of my former self, a hollow body that was being used and abused by men. I had lost all sense of self-worth, and I didn't know how to get it back. But something inside of me refused to give up. I knew I had to escape, and I knew I had to find a way to heal. I started to look for a way out, a way to escape the hell that I was living in. And then, one day, I found it. I found a university course that was 140 miles away, and I knew that was my ticket out. I packed my bags, and I left. I didn't tell anyone, and I didn't look back. I just went, and I started my new life. As I look back, I realize that I was lucky to have escaped. I was lucky to have found a way out of the hell that I was living in. And I was lucky to have found a way to heal. It took years, but I finally found my voice. I finally found the courage to speak out, to tell my story. And I hope that my story can help others, that it can give them the courage to speak out, to seek help. I hope that my story can show them that they are not alone, that there is hope, and that there is the way out. I still remember the feeling of desperation that gripped me as I struggled to make sense of the chaos that had become my life. The days blurred together in a never-ending cycle of abuse and trauma, each one a painful reminder that I was losing myself in the process. I had confided in a college counselor, hoping to find some semblance of support, but even that seemed to backfire. The police handling of my case was a nightmare, making me feel like I was the one who had done something wrong. They implied that the rape wasn't really a rape, that I had somehow given the wrong signals, that I had brought it upon myself. The shame and guilt that followed were suffocating, making it hard for me to breathe. As the weeks went by, the abuse escalated, and I lost all sense of control. Strangers would show up at my doorstep or pull up in cars, making lewd comments and demands. It felt like every man was a threat, and I was just a pawn in their twisted game. I was being raped multiple times a week, sometimes by more than one man in a day. The pain and the fear were constant companions, always lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. I felt like I was living in a never-ending nightmare with no escape in sight. The world around me had become a dark and twisted place where the rules of decency and respect no longer applied. And then there was the party. I was tricked into attending, promised that it would be a safe and fun environment. But as soon as I arrived, I knew I had made a terrible mistake. The music was loud, the lights were flashing, and the crowd was rowdy. I was handed a drink, and before I knew it, I was being dragged into a room, forced to endure yet another horrific ordeal. The anal rape was excruciating, the pain shooting through my body like a knife. And when it was over, the humiliation was just beginning. My attacker paraded me in front of his friends, showing them the blood on the condom, laughing and joking like I was some kind of twisted trophy. I felt like I had hit rock bottom, like I had lost all sense of dignity and self-worth. As I lay there, feeling defeated and broken, I couldn't help but wonder how I had ended up in this place. How had my life taken such a dark and twisted turn? I thought about all the times I had tried to reach out for help, all the times I had been let down by the people who were supposed to protect me. The police, the counselors, the friends who had turned their backs on me. They had all failed me in some way. And now, I was left to pick up the pieces, to try and rebuild my shattered life. But as I looked around the room, I knew I had to get out. I had to escape this living nightmare. no matter what it took. I began to think about my options, about the ways I could escape this hellhole and start anew. I thought about my childhood, about the happy memories I had made with my family, about the person I used to be before all this happened. And I knew that I had to find a way to get back to that person, to rediscover the strength and resilience that had once defined me. The party was a wake-up call, a harsh reminder that I had to take control of my life back. I couldn't keep living in fear, waiting for the next attack, the next humiliation. I had to find a way to break free, to shatter the chains that bound me to this toxic world. And as I lay there, feeling the weight of my trauma, I knew that I had to start by taking small steps. I had to start by finding the courage to speak out, to tell my story, to seek help. It wouldn't be easy, but I knew it was the only way to heal, to move forward, to rediscover myself. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready to take the first step. I was ready to face my demons, to confront the people who had hurt me, to find justice and closure. And as I looked up at the ceiling, I knew that I would never give up, that I would never lose hope. I would rise above this trauma, I would overcome it, and I would emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. As I stepped into my new life, 140 miles away from the darkness that had consumed me, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. The university campus was a breath of fresh air, a chance to start anew, to leave the trauma behind. But as I soon realized, the memories of those horrific experiences didn't just disappear. They lingered, haunting me in the form of flashbacks, nightmares, and an overwhelming sense of anxiety. I tried to push through, to focus on my studies, to build a new life. But the pain was still there, simmering just below the surface. It wasn't until I made the decision to report the abuse again that I began to feel a sense of purpose, of healing. The police took my statement, and for the first time, I felt like I was being heard. The court cases that followed were grueling, but they marked a significant turning point in my recovery. Seeing my abusers brought to justice was a victory, a validation of my experiences. It was a reminder that I wasn't to blame, that I wasn't alone. Shamil, the first man who had raped me, was found guilty and sentenced to prison. It was a moment of closure, of vindication. I had finally found my voice, and I was using it to speak out against the injustices that had been perpetrated against me. As I look back, I realized that my journey towards healing was not just about me. It was about the countless others who have suffered in silence, who have been victimized by the very people who were supposed to protect them. It's about the systemic failures that allowed my abuse to continue, that allowed my perpetrators to walk free for so long. But it's also about hope, about resilience, about the human spirit's capacity to overcome even the darkest of experiences. I've been a nurse for over 10 years now, and my experience has given me a unique perspective, a deeper understanding of the complexities of trauma. I've seen firsthand the impact that abuse can have on a person's life, the way it can erode their sense of self-worth, their sense of purpose. But I've also seen the power of healing, the way that with the right support, the right care, people can overcome even the most daunting challenges. So to anyone who's watching this, who is struggling to find their way, who is trapped in a cycle of abuse, I want you to know that there is hope. You are not alone. You are not to blame. There are people who care, who want to help. Don't be afraid to reach out, to speak out. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Hold on to hope, no matter how dark it may seem. Something good can come from even the most horrific experiences. You can heal. You can recover. You can find a way to live a life that is free from the shadows of your past.